Hello, YGA. This is Lawrence Martin from Mushkegowuk Council. I'm the Director of Lands and Resources here, and we want to talk to you today about our conservation projects. One called the National Marine Conservation Area for James Bay and Hudson Bay, and the other one is called PFP, which stands for Project Financing for Permanence, financing mechanism from Canada to allow us to be able to plan on conservation on the land of our territory. And this is our friend George Naguchi, all the way from Adawabaskat.
What James Bay, I bet that the English get it. I bet you Jimmy Miako to Chigan Motamagi on an apple, Cabot to see Chigatic.
So we'll both use English and what's that language? Mushkegowuk? Mushkegowuk. Okay. So what we want to talk about, Mushkegowuk, Wahkohtowin, as you see here behind us, Mushkegowuk Gagige. And when we started talking about this 3 years ago, we started asking elders, but we told them we have this opportunity to actually talk about the land and how we can become part of managing our own lands again. And at first reaction was, well, we have the treaty. The treaty protects us all. And then of course we had a big discussion around that, and we pulled up these kind of pamphlets that shows about the treaty and so forth. And but at the end of the day, we all agreed that the treaty is wonderful. It recognizes us as a nation when it was signed back in 1905. But there was a clause in there that the government inserted into that document, which we call a taken up clause, which allows the government to come and take lands for resource development, for railways, municipalities, mining, hydro, forestry, all of that, as they wished, as it was deemed necessary for the betterment of the country. But our elders say that was never told to us. We were told that we would share in the resources of the land, and in exchange we would have these benefits of having our education and our housing covered and so forth. And George, you've heard the elders say many times about that. So that's why this opportunity now that has come for us to talk about a conservation project that Canada is involved in, trying to look at targets of conserving 25% by 2025 and 30% by 2030. This is an opportunity for Mushkegowuk to get involved in that and use that as a tool to start looking at how we can take back control and management of our lands. So that's what's been talked about from the last 3 years.
Yeah, that way. Hagi Novacati, Betinis of Togish, Hagagina Giscogistic, Yanamutsigati, Misegon, Husky, Heavy Beaches, Navatana, Misegon, to get that chicken Masquago Mahabatason. Egonobatsigati, Magomenus, Nehaguino, Egomagit, Bimegonanity, Tamogomeno, yes. Egonobatati, Shagomaga, Hachi, and that the Binos Numatogon, just take it Tano. Espima Egonobatama, Kaisin Guino, Tipinogai, Chigonobatsigati, Waska Hegan, Mr. Kapime Nogagi to Yakigoma, Shagomaga, chicken Taminos, and Kitano Goma, Sasmas, no Tishivanishi, Petins, Rotagas, Kino Mage, not Togiskentam, Kiwagiskentam against the Kigoma, Goma Tandikato Chigima, Espima Ganagisko, Mr. Gishao, Muscatus, Pogoinahan, Kiet Nizit of Tamu, Petenegavan, Betagate, Nizit of Tagispi, et Magos Negate, Gascumas Neganik. Nestabugo, heavy Jimmy Mystic, which Magego great mystic than it in Tegigono, no Magesh Gispano, and the Smaggy Mammoth Trindaman, as at Mrs. of Chagati, what in this Tamuk Bisse, Tante Magedo to Makitugunano.
I could tell me that the Moshagi Beji Gash, it is Chigati of Shish, Igumaga at the Skamaga that the gab addition Jan what you got take. Igumago Umaga do to not me gotcha nuch, Igoni do you got take Adam what you got to put the man. Adam what you got to that take issue on the stand okuban, Oman the Skumaton or Skidnishkum, the Skumaton. Moriga gon get to Chigamagan and that treaty te hero and the ma. Moriga Magagon Kago, Chasaminano, or Ske, a game one of Magostano. Oshke we eska we should not do take dan digi tog when we jab at Simonton or Mushkegowuk Makana or Mushkegowuk communities specific Egomaga Canada skill Makana Egomaga Shich Ontario Chugmug. You're going to go with do take. So yeah, so this is an opportunity to actually form a new relationship, not based on the expectations, the false expectations of what the treaty gave us. This talk about the conservation and working with Canada is an opportunity to establish a new relationship with them and with Ontario over the lands and control and management of the lands. That's why, going back to the word here, Mushkegowuk, that's us, our people, and Wahkohtowin talks about establishing relationships. In this case, our elders told us to re-establish our relationship because they feel there's a sense of loss of relationship between us and the land, the animals, the birds, the fish, the water, everything, because we don't live off the land as much anymore because we're stuck in these isolated reservations, and when conditions are not up to what our expectations are, when there's lack of opportunities and so on, people move to the cities, and most of our community members now live in urban centers in Timmins, North Bay, Ottawa, wherever around the world, so that they're seeking their different opportunities. And so now there's a smaller population on reserve, but nevertheless it's still our homelands. It's still our homelands, and that's why we want to be able to get involved in managing it and doing more research and utilizing the knowledge that our elders have of the land and the animals and how we can establish our relationship with them to ensure that they're safe, that the land and water is safe. And that's why we're told to use that word Wahkohtowin. Chiwahkohtowin. Yeah, I want you got to go higegona. Ontario, Canada,
Could you maybe just clarify a little bit on, in terms of Ontario and our relationship with Wahkohtowin? Where is everything in place at the moment?
Well, I guess that's the thing. Our elders, our perspective is that we want to be the ones to reach out to Ontario and to Canada and say, there's been, a couple hundred years that has gone by, since the relationship with Canada, with settlers from Europe that came to Hudson Bay, James Bay. Our first relationship with them was that we were the providers of the fur industry. We were the trappers of the land, of the animals. We sold them to the Hudson Bay, and that helped, form Canada in itself. So our relationship was different back then, but now today, the relationship is different. We're still now on reservations, and we still, in our minds, have traditional lands that we used to use, that we still use today. But we don't have control of it. Somebody else is controlling it. And this is where you have to learn a lot of different things as we go about doing this project, understanding how does this government work? How does the conservation apply to the Confederation itself in terms of how Canada and Ontario operates? How come Ontario is the one that has jurisdiction over land, and here we find out Canada has jurisdiction over water only, with James Bay and Hudson Bay? So you have two levels of government that have different powers, different jurisdiction that we have to deal with. So when we talk about James Bay, Hudson Bay, we're only talking to Canada. And when we talk about land, anywhere on the land, even as far as the tidal waters recede into low tide, Ontario's jurisdiction kicks in. So that whole relationship is that important to understand each other. When we talk about, how we relate to the land, we talk about 6 seasons that we use and a different way of how we interpret what's happening with the water, what's happening with the permafrost, what's happening with the climate change. We have a different worldview, Gaitanok. So that's the relationship is, get to the table, talking to each other and understanding each other. So that we understand each other fully and understand why every different levels of government has jurisdiction. Right now, we're trying to bring Ontario to the table to talk about this, but they're not responding. And when we look at maps that we have drawn up, it shows that the Ontario government is giving permits to the mining claims, to several thousands of mining claims throughout their territory. And I can kind of guess why they would want to talk to us. It seems their objective is to create as many mines as possible, which to them be contradicting when we say we want conservation and critical mineral strategy to go hand in hand, so that we sit together, talk about where it would be safe to have mines and where we would need to have conservation for sure to protect, sacred areas and all of that sort of thing. So so we're still at this moment on this day here, whatever date is, I think October 16th, 2024. We're still waiting for Ontario to come to the table.
And again, all these claims, and again it goes back to that picking up glass. And no matter how much they do, she how, and when you didn't hit, it's true. Come out on, I got to bend the mistake when it didn't get to. One big, one get baked in is of dinero. Then you know, but it's true. Come out, and now, and that.
That way, going to now.
When you call me, call that he gave my house on Indian. That was good. CB can was sticking is to go at the gum. And then each way going to raise it to bend out his true. Come out. Pay way away, talking it into that to get through my to mystery one.
Yeah.
I go on my god, I have way for that.
I go and he gone a baby Dutch. I am actually kin we jab at see to Ontario, Canada, so there's not a good working relationship between Ontario and Canada at the moment. I don't know why. One is the Conservative Party in Ontario and the Liberals NDP in Canada. I don't know if that has something to do with it. But certainly there is not a good working relationship there, and we're caught in the middle. We're caught in the middle of that. We can't get them to work together, and therefore, as 3 groups ourselves, Ontario and Canada, are the ones that need to come to the table of all 3 parties, and that's not happening. So we're working good with Canada, but not working with Ontario, and Ontario and Canada are not working together either. So so we're stuck in the middle,
I go magani go Ontario is true. Go magani get conservative sunny given that. I go maga blue. Go get how. Kabet to have man in the Hanigan romantic is true. Go ma. House because it's a good job, Mr. Blue at TV. Who is now at Canada might take his true. Go ma. Go get how. Kamo because it's the one we got Canada start Canada is true about. And TP Magish Funny this town was South so we know you one again. I go on my guns to take Mr. Hannah. Tiny details come over in the head. It's true about the skin of the should be the cake on the Bentaco. Ontario, you want to bend Canada, and it's not any other dead now in NTP. I don't know. One night I go, my mistake in the knock. One I go money based in the Sustagatio. Because named in the basis is to Custagati, Omagivan Gaidotama, Custagati in Dagonumarivan. And now I told in the Hanaton, I gave a speed. GD to Tagati, Omagivan in Tigatio. Tied into me.
mula shuta boy gwes nisa tumog miswe when kind of ate skiltan og gana Mushkegowuk og mula miswe when kind of gin sida tumi gana vedu chigate Pepi toshe shiganov tumog when matsuno when kind of. So we're often told that, you know, no matter what you do, you're never going to get every single person to understand what it is you're doing. It's just the way humans are. So we'll try our best as we go across. But anyways, this is the important part, is to establish those relationships. So use Wahkohtowin in conducting that process of trying to bring people together, and even our own people. You know, we're separated by communities, and that was when Indian Act that was created in 1876, and then when the treaties were enacted in 1905, those colonial systems separated us, took us off the land, and the whole point, it seems, and looking back, is that our people were expected to get off the land, go live on these isolated reservations that were created to keep us off the land for development, for access by the governments to use as they wished. That's what a lot of people think. And we're still on reservations today, and we're still marginalized in terms of access to jobs, access to health, access to education, and infrastructure, and even clean drinking water. So of all communities in Canada, the First Nations are at least 5 times have less opportunities than the rest of the municipalities across the country. So there's that situation we have to deal with as well, to try and use any tool we can to get out of that state of poverty, that state of inaccess from jobs. You know, when there's mines opening up, forestry and so forth, we're the last ones to get any kind of jobs and access to them. And then our education system doesn't live up to its quality that it's supposed to have that the rest of the country is enjoying. So even if we have schools and high schools in our communities, what they learn when they go out into the cities to work and go to higher education, they're having trouble because the standards have been so different. So there's a lot of stuff that we need to deal with, but this conservation project allows us to use it as leverage to talk about that, to bring governments together, different, departments, so that we can talk to Indian Affairs about housing requirements. We can talk to Health, Ministry of Health, about the hospital services and so on. So we use this as a leverage, as a tool to bring people together in the hopes of Wahkohtowin happening, of re-establishing a new relationship. So it's an opportunity. So this talk about the land is bringing people together in the state. So there's a lot of work to be done, but for what we're trying to do here, go to the next slide there, Ron. We're trying to look at this as to honor what our elders, it's not just us that came up with this idea. These elders here, like this is Andy Rickard, who started up the Treaty 9 in 1974. You have James Wesley, the leader from Cash, and we have James Carpenter, from Adawabsket. These are elders that said, protect the land. Don't be afraid. You get out there and protect the land and protect the waters and our ways of life. And these elders have always been doing that, and they always said, this is for the future, for the children. So this is what we're trying to honor. And, we live and die from resolutions ourselves as Mushkegowuk Council. We're driven by what we do by resolution. So these elders in 1989 made a resolution saying, create Mushkegowuk Conservation Authority. We have that resolution here. And it basically says for us to do what we're doing today. And they said that back in the early 1990s, 1989, like I said. So that's what we're trying to follow, what these elders have said to us. And to always keep the treaty bundle as sacred, because it recognizes as a nation, as a people, but what they heard was from the oral promises that were made, which was different from the written one. So that's why we're doing this. And so as we move forward, what we want to be able to tap on is that, number one, to make sure that the treaty promises, the oral treaty promises are kept. And we must put the responsibility of that to the governments, that they have to follow that. And number two is redefining the relationship, as we talked about, through Wahkohtowin. And number three, if we work together as a nation, there's strength in unity. We see that often. Number four, and we talk about the benefits to the people of the jobs that we'd be able to create from this conservation work, and how the staff housing that would come with it, the office spaces, and being able to access the land, with resources available for snow machines, boats and motors, and then being able to go out on a land and monitor and watch what is happening out there with this climate change, and to be able to monitor what the mining companies are trying to do with the exploration and the mining claims in our territory. But number five, we always have a timeline. And the timeline right now, today in October 2024, is that there's an election coming up next year, but can the federal government that's in power stay in power, or they get thrown off by the continuing pressure from the conservatives to have an earlier election? So that's why we're trying to get this project approved by the people quickly, at the same time keeping in mind everything that's important that we have to do. And the big thing, number six, is that the approval has to come from the community. What we're doing as Mushkegowuk is facilitating the discussions, facilitating that by bringing government people to the table as best as we can, bringing mining companies to the tables, talking to them about our concerns. But the communities at the end of the day will be the ones to say yes or no. You understand now?
Yeah, and we had a good turnout, like in terms of a slow start, community engagements, but they're growing. It's growing faster. More people are coming out, and some of them even apologize and say, "Hey, I didn't understand. I'm sorry, Lawrence, I'm sorry." Stuff like that. Now they're starting to realize that this is a good thing. Maybe this is what we need. A lot of them say that, but do it in professional or whatever, to conserve everything better. Like this is almost like I would understand it this way, like it's a new treaty thing. It's a new engagement, or it's a new Wahkohtowin means, like you said, bringing everybody together to work together. This is probably a new replacement of the stuff that we've been doing, like treaty-wise, exactly. And the Matuwait magazine, then, mas ko, man din, katrin ta ko na kana, kay gon sigiyot sa minamat si makaski kay tono, 20 agonos kay gon, 20 na nabat to na, 20 na kay gon at sa minamat siya kay 20. Kay mas ko kasi we check ko check din ni kay din dan.
At no sinabing Moshag maganditonan mulilo treaty, mayo treaty gala mo siya tek. Pito siya na treaty lagyabas kay tagon ang Moshag. Ayaw mo gala mo siya tek pito siya na gustanog we chabat si magana guchug mao. Kila ano siya espaloyer kapag iti na nagastay kat taskino siya minastanog. Tanang kasi nakatag na napyo
Menegasistang to ya.
Egon himoji gistentau to tutmak. Ko banana ko kapag ito tete kapag simulige tek. Sinabago chagan na mo kay gono ganang tapos tigas ko masukik. Chagan na mo muli skadni gante keno. Siga ko minastatic. Maswebo ko chagan na mo. Egon maga kestigilan siga ko ya. Siga na mo tumaguma. Sibine nagat stanok kuya skekon meswebo kuya shishak nemesak kaya batshag chimatsu nuche. So yeah, so it's a long process, and it's taken a few years. Again, we started when COVID started, so we couldn't go into the communities because of COVID. And now, 3 years later, we're rushing, trying to get to the finish line. And yesterday I was listening to the discussions at Assembly First Nations meeting in Calgary. They're talking about the Child Family Services final agreement. They also started around the time of COVID. And today they're now at the final agreement, and they're asking the chiefs, yes or no, do you take this final agreement on accepting $48 billion of a deal with Canada to start taking over your Child Family Services programs. So here we are talking about conservation, preserving the land for the future in the same way. We have money on the table as well. We have $100 million that the government has committed to for us to use in planning on how we're going to do that. But we must lock that $100 million in by quickly doing a submission to the Treasury Board now this fall before Christmas to be able to access it. So timing-wise, we're also in the same boat. So that's why we need to try and get this project finished before the election happens and before we lose the momentum on a Treasury Board schedule and before things change. This is an opportunity and a direction from our people for so many years. So we need to listen to that. So I think what we're going to do, George, is leave it here right now, and then we'll make another video and talk about the next part of the project. So that gives us a chance to break up this presentation and focus on the next part, which is going to be some of the benefits of the project, as we will talk later. So for now, we'll call it a good morning, good evening, or good time, and we'll get back to you and continue this discussion and explanation of what this project is about. Much it.
That's it.